Hi folks, welcome back. So in the first video, congratulations for making your way through that. What we're basically doing is looking at what we call the purpose and the context. So why this is important, why we need to do it, and also to hopefully give you an understanding of the power of the framework in terms of being able to understand where your business is, map out a sustainable and exciting, it's passionate, it's exciting growth plan. And so now I think it's actually time to pop the bonnet and actually have a look at the framework so that you can actually see what all of these bricks are and how they then form a road to success.
Correct. Now, of course, we should also explain our roles here. So my name is Jeremy Schwartz. I'm the creator of the Founders Fortune Framework and Academy. And Pete, you are my fantastic collaborator. But in this instance, you are also representing the viewer.
Yes.
Representing the buyer, representing the founder who's listening, and here to ask those challenging, tricky, nasty questions that both you as a listener or a buyer would be asking, so that we really hold the process to account and put ourselves in a buyer's shoes, not in the seller's.
That's right. So as a viewer, I'm going to be inquisitive, I'm going to be exploratory, and as a buyer, I'm going to be downright suspicious.
Definitely, and challenging. Right, so we're going to kick off by explaining that there are 6 sections to our framework, and we're going to jump into the first one with the question that we need to be asking, which is, how do we find breakthrough growth ideas? Now, why is this important? Because you see, when a buyer is looking at a business, or when you're running your own business, what they want to know is this business growing, and has it got future prospects of growth based on historic sales and profits? Because that gives them the reassurance based on fact that there is something in the future to be excited by.
That's right.
Now, what we have found is that often entrepreneurs, and founders can have several things going on. The first is they could be just comfortable with a relatively flat growth and a constant profit because they're able to get a good dividend. They can live off that well. They don't want to perhaps invest, and they don't perhaps feel comfortable to think about taking a risk. Not that there might be a risk, but it requires more effort. Or it is simply they have a business that they have not been able to grow and not be able to increase the profitability, and they're struggling with that. And in those instances, buyers will say, well, I'm not so sure that this is an interesting thing to look at, because if I can't see the historic sales there, why would I think about the growth? And therefore, what we created is the growth engine system, which is a whole methodology to assess, to imagine, and then to mobilize the business into growth.
That's right, and I think this comes back to the point which we made on the previous video, that the buyers are not necessarily looking at what the business is. I mean, they are, but more importantly, and the reason why they're going to reach into their briefcase and bring out huge bars of gold is because of what the business could be in their eyes, and it's in their eyes that's the important bit, because we need to have them sitting at the table going, this is a good business, this could go places, I'm going to make a lot of money with this, because of course what they want to do is, and this is obviously how we're getting the big multiples, because that's what we're after, the big multipliers, is because they're going to go, even if I pay a ton of money for this business, I'm still going to make more money back.
Exactly, and therefore the facts of the historic data is the things that gives them the first belief that the future can be good. Because anybody can talk up a good story about the future based on wishes and desires and hope.
Yes.
But people don't want to buy hope marketing. They don't want to buy dreams and wishes. They want to buy something that's got a factual base. And that's why this is such an important first step. Now, the second step is, how do we target super spending consumers and customers? And why is that important? Well, because what we see in many businesses, actually not only in founders, but we work with huge multinationals, is that few people really understand who their super spending customers are and consumers. And the consequence of that is they have what I call splattergun or shotgun marketing and investment, where they're basically shooting and trying to engage any customer, and they're engaging those customers that can actually be losing their money, and investing in those people with the same effort and money as the super spenders.
Yes.
And the problem with that is you might be growing, but you may be growing your unprofitable customers faster than your profitable ones. But most importantly, it's funny, let me tell you this, because this really was an insight when I was selling a couple of businesses to private equity. That in fact, after just checking on, that there was a basic business in the first section that was interesting, was tell me about your customers. I was actually quite surprised that at first, when I was beginning this journey of helping and selling companies, that actually would be the second major question. But the reason is they want to know, how am I buying something that's got substance? What's behind the bonnet of the sales and so on that's driving it? And what they want to see is that there's a customer base there that's growing, where you are not actually churning customers at such a rate you're having to spend a huge amount of money to recruit new people because you're losing them as quickly.
Yes.
And therefore, we have a whole analysis here, an assessment of not only the consumers, but the brand and the equity that you've built in your business, and to shine a light on that, and then, of course, improve it so it's in the best form to sell and the most exciting story to share.
It is, because it almost goes back to kind of like the whole Pareto's law, isn't it? Where you've got, kind of like 20% of your result, like 80% of your profits come from 20% of your customers. And the thing about it is we have to, just with the same way, I love David Ogilvy's approach, which is basically you always credit your customers with, at least the same level of intelligence that you've got.
Oh, definitely.
And this is definitely true when it comes to buyers, because that question is going to come up. And they're going to be asking it, because they're basically saying, right, okay, if we're going to scale this business, how, what sort of customers have we got, and how many of these guys do we need to find? So that, because they're going to be doing their own sums and their own projection. So if we can say, look, this is basically our cash cows, then they want to know how many, how easy is it going to be to put more cash cows into this business to make sure that kind of like the profit margin doesn't get eroded as we scale this up, because obviously that's what they're going to want to do.
Correct. Now, and there's a huge amount that we can share, and we will share in the future.
And we will be
videos.
diving into that later on.
And you're going to be
Stay
asking
tuned.
those challenging questions,
I
which
will.
is the role you're playing here. So the next one is to be able to expand into new opportunities profitably. Because, of course, what we need to be able to establish is, well, how are we going to grow this business? And one is growing the core, but there are many low-hanging fruit or neat ways to grow a business, and to grow into new categories, new consumers, and particularly new countries. And what we see is that often a company may have expanded, but they have done something which I call accepting or welcoming the first hot body. What do I mean by that? Well, it is that a customer or a country, somebody in a country, a distributor or franchisee may ring them up and say, look, we'd love to sell your product. Can we do that? And you're so delighted that somebody's taken an interest in your business that you jump into that with that person and say, of course, please now, establish my business in Sweden or wherever. But when you start analyzing it, you find that this person may not have been the best business person. This person may not have had the customers you want. And when you look at the profitability and the performance of that, you suddenly discover that it's diluting actually your core.
Yes.
And the consequence of that is that buyers will say, well, actually, you've not given me a proof of concept that this business can expand profitably. What you've shown is that in your expansion, you've created a doubt and a question. And therefore, this business expansion system is all about bringing a very systematic methodology for evaluating opportunities, whether they're countries or customers or consumers or products or categories, but doing it in a way that's so methodical that when you then press the button and go ahead, you're doing it knowing that you're going to be a great success and creating a proof of concept that you can grow further, or a buyer can, rather than something that becomes a bad story. So I don't know what challenging questions you would have me on that, but if you have something in mind just to kick us off, obviously we're going to drill down in much more detail in the program on that, but anything come to mind?
It's not necessarily a question, it's more, because obviously, and I totally get, because in some cases, as you say, first of all, it's like a teenager at a disco. Yeah, you're not necessarily looking at the applicability of the person that you're then talking to.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, someone has taken interest in me.
Absolutely.
So, and it goes back to the point we're making in the other video, which is a lot of the time that companies will, if they're experiencing problems, it's almost like they said, right, well, let's grow.
Yeah.
It's almost like
totally.
And I tell you what it's like somebody's driving home and they've got a bit of a problem with their engine and think, I tell you what, I need to get home as quick as I can.
Yeah.
So what they then do is they put their foot to the floor.
Yeah. No, it's very much, and I've been in that situation where in order to create growth, because it can be hard to grow the core, you then look at ways that you can take your business, your equity, your idea to another opportunity that's as rich as your home one. And that's all logical. It's all good. First of all, lots of people can be afraid of doing that. So many companies don't export, and because they're frightened of the journey, they don't know how.
Yes.
Or if they do, again, they haven't applied the diligence to ensure that what they've done is as good as what they've been doing, and therefore is enhancing and a great story.
The other really powerful bit about this as well is that with a lot of businesses, and so many businesses I've seen, because obviously one of the biggest costs in a business as a rule is attracting your customers.
Yeah,
you're basically
absolutely.
spending all the money to position yourself, making that.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is that with a lot of smart companies, what they'll then do is said, right, we've now got a relationship. How can we monetize that?
Yeah.
Either through joint ventures where you kind of, you're doing referrals, or indeed by saying, right, if this person is coming to us as part of this need, what else could we then effectively service? So, kind of how do you then go sideways?
Correct. So that's another element of this, which is called, we're putting it under the idea of brand stretch.
Yes.
Not everybody here will have a brand, but we're going to assume that if you're going to be selling, you'll have something that's got a name and has got something that's got a reputation. And we'll be talking about how and far can you stretch your business.
Yes.
Something that people, again, are not so sophisticated in thinking about. And in some areas, you can stretch it much further than you might have imagined. And I've got lots of stories of that. And other places, you should not stretch to where you think you're going because you haven't got permission from your consumers to go into that space. And I'm not going to explain it now because then we'll be drilling too deep, but that's what we're going to be
It's going to tantalize you.
So what could be the other question actually that buyers are asking? In fact, it's our next area, which is how do you create and organizing a winning team and structure of a company? And this is crucial because, again, funnily enough, buyers are buying businesses, but actually they're buying people. They're buying the team. You sort of touched on it earlier. That in fact, knowing that the founder will be leaving with hopefully the fortune, not even hopefully, with the fortune that we will create, then the buyer is turning to the existing team and a new leader that is put in place. And they need to know that that team have got the capabilities and the skills and the leadership themselves and the power to go and execute what we'll be talking in a second, which is this future growth plan. And if they don't see that, they will walk away from a lot of businesses. I mean, many private equity and others I've spoken to say, yes, the business is nice, but quite often there could be multiple types of business. We're buying the team we want to know. And why this is so important is that otherwise they're going to have to spend the money to put that team in place, to train them up. And what happens then is they will discount the price they're willing to pay the founder, because if they've got to do that investment, then they're going to take that off the price. And that's why we have our process here, the people and process methodology, which is to, again, systematically ensure we're putting in place over time a fantastic team that will be able to step up when the founder leaves, and all the processes. I just tell you one little thing that I've shocked so many times is the amount of times we discover in a company some fraud by existing employees. In fact, I've been in a company recently where the actual CEO, the founder and CEO, was so fraudulent that we had to exit that very person from the business before, or they actually walked away with half a fortune already because they'd already sold it once. So the processes and the routines are to show that you're a professional, world-class business, but one in which a buyer won't uncover after purchase or at some time a fraudulent situation which will completely change the profile of the company.
Yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, it's the people, it's the knowledge. If you've ever been in, and I'm sure that most of the guys on the video will be in an organization whereby you've got either somebody senior, and the amount of knowledge that goes in, and the amount of time it takes to replace that, the amount of lessons learned. There's a company which I've worked with for many years, and they have a very, very, very high turnover of staff, especially in their marketing team. And what it basically means is that even though the company is like 2 decades old, as far as their, a lot of their sales and their marketing and stuff, they're actually only about 6 months old. And so you see them making, almost like looping, kind of like back through the same mistake. So the power of that is something that a buyer is definitely going to value, because again, the whole point about this is when a buyer looks at your business, they're going to be saying, right, this is sitting somewhere on a spectrum between no and an amazing opportunity, and what you don't want to be is in the what we call the fixer-upper zone, which is, we'll take it, we're going to have to do a lot of work in order to make this successful, because all of that comes straight off your fortune.
Correct. And quite often they'll walk away because why take the risk and the effort unless there's something really special. So that leads us to this crucial part. So all of those sections we've done there, that is where we work with companies and founders and entrepreneurs for several years sometimes, because in fact, to put all those elements into place in a way that's really exciting, that has a solid foundation, can take time. And if you leave it too late and try and sell when you haven't dotted all those I's and got it all in the place, the chances of you selling become low, because as we've explained, only 20% of businesses are actually ever sold. And they're not sold because those things are not put in place.
That's it.
Or multiple other reasons. But once you're now in the mode where you're in a sales trajectory, an exit trajectory, a selling of your business, we now need to create a future plan of growth, something that will excite the buyer that there is a potential. And what we see here again is that founders and even others who are trying to sell a company can put in place what they think is an exciting plan. And yet, as soon as it's challenged by a buyer, we discover, though it may be inspiring, it's not watertight. Though
Yes.
it may be a plan that gets you really your eyes opening, actually it's not built on a foundation that is defendable. And as soon as that plan starts to unwind, because just very simple, challenging questions that you, representing the buyer here, and our listeners, would ask, it just falls apart. All the confidence goes. And now the buyer says, right, I better create my own plan. And again, I'm going to start discounting how much I was going to pay, because of course, I'm not going to show my exciting plan to the seller. I'm going to show them a very conservative, uninspiring one, because that allows me to push down that multiple, push down the price I'm going to pay, and therefore reduce that founder's fortune. So it's crucial that the founder creates a plan that he can defend and she can defend completely, and it's got the excitement that creates the multiple, but the defendability, which means that it can't be challenged. And that's why we have our future value building blocks. And the reason we call it building blocks is a really exciting methodology I learned relatively early in my career, which is to think about the future of any business and our private lives as well, and to construct it in building blocks of initiatives, which are both individually expressed over time horizontally, but also are additive over on top of each other. So, for example, we could say, right, we've got what are the customers that we have now and how are we going to expand our customer base? And then we can add on another building block of countries, but also look at countries both as a building block, but also over time. So we build this total picture of growth, both over time and via different types of formal growth.
The reason why I like the block model is because with a lot of folks, you kind of like look at growth graph and you've got like that.
Absolutely.
The nice thing about this is because what healthy growth looks like is not like that. It's like this.
Yeah.
Because what you want to do is you want to grow, but then you want to stabilize. And again, you and I both work with lots of companies whereby they are so keen on growth that they will be continually changing things. And that means they never have the chance to, okay, we're going to, because basic growth is change.
Yeah.
And what you want is change, stabilization, and optimization,
Yes.
change. So you're basically stepping up. And the nice thing about the building blocks is it naturally has that inbuilt, which is we're going to make this change, but then we're going to stabilize, we're going to review. And once that is then done and in place and everybody knows what they're doing, we're then going to bite off the next one, rather than a lot of founders. Because a lot of founders are entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs have a terrible habit of running around like a loose cannon. The 3 a.m. phone call, I've had this amazing idea.
absolutely.
And then the next morning there's a 3 a.m. phone call. And everything is constantly in a state of flux. So this gives you a way in which you can grow, but it's sustainable growth.
Correct.
And it's not the growth that's going to blow the business apart.
Correct. And very importantly, where many people in all sorts of life struggle is to picture over time how you can expand, grow, and build on a particular initiative. This is the subtle thing here that is so crucial, that the ability to say, right, not only have we got an item that can cause us to growth, but how are we going to innovate and make that grow over time and bring initiatives? People struggle to think perhaps 3-5 years. I don't want to talk about 10 years or anything ridiculous like that, because that's not the buyer's time frame. It's usually 3 to 5 years, but to not only be restricted on something exciting in the first 2 years and then have no idea about those other years, because that's when that momentum has to be increased. And this methodology ensures that we explore and think about the future that we might never have thought of and put concrete initiatives there.
Yes.
Which then leads us to our final step, which is to maximize the founder's fortune. And it can so easily be the moment when a founder loses what they thought was so exciting, which is then the negotiation phase, because this is the point where, the excitement becomes great. The numbers are glossing in their eyes. That money seems to be just within a hand's reach. But the buyer knows this is also the chance to lock in the seller into an agreement that protects the buyer, but can also undermine the seller's opportunity. So, for example, they can be locked in for 3 years, so they can take an ownership of that future plan and have to deliver it themselves and be able to do that. But also they can delay payments until certain thresholds and milestones are met, partly linked to that plan. And if those thresholds aren't met and those milestones aren't met, which may not be the founder's fault, because by selling the company, he may have new managers, new bosses, new investment, and therefore he may not, or she may, let's be clear, may not be fully in control of that future. Yet the payments will be dependent on performance in the future that they don't have full control of. So what we play here and our role here in the fortune multiplier system is to truly represent the seller, to negotiate for them, to ensure that the dizziness of the opportunity does not cloud their decision making, and to ensure that they truly walk away with the maximum fortune that doesn't get undermined over time. So,
yes, yeah, it's where exit actually means exit. So that money is in the bank.
Absolutely.
You've done a good job, because the thing about it is you're able to sell hand on heart and say, yes, we've worked hard to make this a bloody good opportunity for you guys, and that's what I'm selling you. And then you can basically walk away and go, right, I'm now done. I can now embark on the next phase of my life, whatever that happens to be, whether it's starting something else, or kind of like touring the world with time with loved ones. But it's then a way of saying, right, because with a lot of businesses, when they don't have this systematic approach, it's almost like they're buying a scratch card. There's big numbers, but then you have to scratch off the silver paper and see what you've actually won.
Oh, exactly.
And without this sort of system in place, a lot of the time that's not as inspiring, or even worse, as you say. What then happens is you then basically get tethered to a business which is no longer under your control, which may be operated by other people, and then that's a place that you don't want to be. And this is what stops that.
Correct. And of course, often you have to do that to some degree, but it's all about negotiation. And this is all about a negotiation play, but also having the best interest of the seller very clearly at heart, and having the backup there. So what you've heard is our Founders Fortune Framework. It's what is our Founders Fortune Academy. We have some fantastic entrepreneurs going through it from all around the world, from the UK, from Ireland, from Dubai, from South Africa, from Australia, and from other countries as well. And they are all really excited by the results that we're creating for them and with them, and they're creating, and lots of fantastic testimonials. And now we're going to, in the next videos, drill down into much more detail and give you a flavor. Because just to finish, one of the important elements that we have here is teaching and knowledge is one thing, implementation and action is another element and another skill.
Yes.
We can learn all of these things, but the difference that we make in our academy, in our process here, is it's the application and the practicing and the tailoring and personalizing to your business, and to ensure that you actually get the results, and it's not just an academic exercise that you walk away, go back to your business and do exactly what you were doing and don't benefit from all the coaching and teaching and all the skills that we're bringing. So that's the secret recipe here of our academy.
Basically, we hope that you find this interesting, but above and beyond that, we want you to find this profitable. I think that's
absolutely and actionable, and something that changes the outlook of your company. So without further ado, we'll call that a wrap, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.
See you then.
See you then.